Hello and welcome everyone. So today in this session we are going to just have some concepts, some ideas related to this Bean Factory extended to a new terminology that you are going to hear today, that is application context. So let's just revise quickly whatever we have discussed so far. So we have understood the concepts of application and how the application works in a Spring framework using the idea of IOC container. We have discussed about dependency injection. Then in the last two videos you have seen the most powerful features of your IOC container using setter injection and constructor injection. And today the thing is, what we are gonna discuss is something called Bean Factory, that most probably I have been using this since the day one when we have been introduced to the IOC container, and we talked about how we are gonna work with our application object managed bean, which is going to be generated or created at runtime by our IOC container. So this Bean Factory, the day I started programming, I introduced you to the Spring very first tutorial I showed you. And if we consider the code portion over here, okay, so this is my Eclipse welcome in screen, and you come over here to your application source code implementation account. Here many times I have used this Bean Factory. This is the particular interface variable that I am creating, and one of the implementation class in it, XML Bean Factory, that I instantiated and just use the file system resource to refer to where my configurations are. And at that time also I pointed you that this is being underlined by the Eclipse ID, indicating that this particular API has been deprecated and it's not recommended. See here the message, the type XML Bean Factory is deprecated. So what exactly is the alternative and the industry standard approach, the class that we should use and follow in our application, is what we are going to discuss today. A replacement for direct use of this Bean Factory. So this is what we have to discuss. Okay, so here first of all what I'm going to talk about is what is the exact use of these Bean Factories. So I guess now you understand that a Bean Factory enables you to access JavaBeans or classes that are instantiated, wired and managed by Spring container. Let me write this for you to making it clear in case this my audio quality is not being audible or am I not audible to you. So I see that a Bean Factory, I should rather as a Bean Factory enables you to access JavaBeans, or you call it Java classes, that are instantiated, wired and managed by the Spring container. Okay, I guess there should be no difficulty in understanding what I have written apart from this word wired. And why I'm introducing this word, because in the next tutorial we are going to talk a concept in Spring known as auto wiring. But let's not mix the things over here. Just keep in mind that this term we have to learn soon. A Bean Factory enables you to access JavaBeans classes that are instantiated, wired and managed by the Spring container. So this is what you are doing. You are instantiating your objects via object container, IOC container, and you are managing it by the Spring container, making it available to your components by using this Bean Factory. And if we consider Bean Factory in this Spring, there are a lot of library classes available for this. But the application context, this application context interface that I'm talking about, we are going to discuss it soon, is the most frequent used one, because it provides a lot of valuable extra feature on top of this Bean Factory. Like it includes supports for internationalization, resource loading, integration with external context hierarchies, event publishing and lot more. Let me write it again, like this application context. Why you are using it? Because this question might come in your mind soon. So the reason why I'm going to introduce you and what exactly the big difference it is going to make in your application is that application context supports, let me summarize it this for you, internationalization, resource loading, integration with external context hierarchies, event publishing and lot more. So these are the basic features, or more than this it is available to offer you. Soon you will observe in the coming series, but this could be possible functionality that why we are convinced to use application context. And as I just now said, that beside application context we have other BeanFactory implementations too that supports somewhat different levels of functionality, in practice mostly related to the configuration mechanism, with that XML that you are using being by far the most common representation, whether it's web application, starts infrastructure based application, or nearly all possible framework that we come across. There is the configuration. When we talk about XML is the industry choice. Okay, so let's see. And all this BeanFactory that is there available are simply implementing this framework, or simply this particular BeanFactory belong to one of the package over here that we have introduced earlier to, that is org.spring-framework.beans.factory. This contains BeanFactory as the interface, that is the top level of interface. Here let me change the color. This is BeanFactory is the top level of interface from which all other interfaces are derived. Even the application context derive features from this BeanFactory and is built on top of it to give some more functionality, as I have just pointed out here some of the features that it has to offer for your application. And let's not waste the time and come here. So but before that I should discuss this application context and BeanFactory, what other specific classes or interfaces, the choices you have, you must know it. And let me just list out all those specific libraries or specific interfaces that we have here that can be used over here as a choice for reading the configurations and instantiating the object, wiring it, and providing it back to the application component. Some of these are, like I can point over here, Hierarchical BeanFactory, one of the interface that is directly inheriting from or directly extending this BeanFactory interface in this package and providing you some configuration retrieval mechanism. Beside this we have listable BeanFactory, we have something AutoWire, capable BeanFactory, we have Configurable BeanFactory, and the most important one, application context. Let me just highlight it over here because this is the topic we have to discuss today. And so when I say there are a lot of interfaces which are further derived from this BeanFactory interface and are going to provide you the mechanism to simply wire up and read your configuration and provide you with the object. It is going to produce object for you as it is obeying the rules of your factory pattern, and it's just acting as a particular top level of interface which will produce objects and will provide it to the implementation of the component wherever you want to use it. So these are the list of available other BeanFactory implementation or interfaces that we can use. But out of all these, application context is the most advanced factory. And it's important to note here that this interface resides in another package other than all these are belonging to the same package I listed over here, org.springframework.beans.factory. Hierarchical, listable, AutoWire, and configurable all belong to this package. But application context, with an exception, belongs to org.springframework.context package. I guess I made some spelling mistake over here, framework. Okay, so this is the package in which your application context resides. Beside other or all of the listed above lies in the same package we discussed. So now I think this might be getting messed up over here, like a lot of interfaces I'm talking about, which one is derived from which and what exactly is the hierarchy you want to know. And again I'm gonna draw some diagrams over here which is going to make the things pretty clear. So let's start with here and say this is our top level of BeanFactory. I guess you know this, you recognize the symbol of interface over here, and I say this is your bean factory at top. Bean factory, okay, at top lies this one, okay. Bean factory should be arranged properly so that you can understand what I'm trying to explain. And this is at top, I have this bean factory interface, and this is the base interface as said earlier. What else we have beside this? What else? Whatever I have mentioned there in the documentation, all are available. Let me just make a copy, few copies of it, and just change it over here. We have some of these here, okay. So let's delete this bean factory, this delete this one too, and this one again I don't require. So here bean factory, and then as I said there is something called hierarchical bean factory, okay. Just decreasing the font to make it adjustable over here. I think it is viewable to you. And then another set we have here, that is listable bean factory. Listable bean factory. And the third one is your auto wire capable bean factory, okay. And let me just point it over here. No, this one is not the correct symbol. I guess this one, here you go. This cannot be rotated actually, so let's try it like this. And we have here another link, then we have this, and the arrow, the most important one over here, the available set of symbol. What I got here is, let me just make it like this. I guess you can understand what I'm just trying to display. I'm not good at designing kind of things, so better hope you understand that, okay. And then I have this one here, and okay, so this is all the best I can do to explain it diagrammatically, although it doesn't fit to your requirement, I know. So what I'm suggesting here, like I discussed a lot of these available bean factories for producing those objects and providing it to our component. At top we have bean factory, then we have hierarchical bean factory, listable and auto wire capable bean factory. All of these interfaces directly extend this bean factory and provide you some level of specific feature, specific I can say functionality to access the configuration. And the thing that I was talking is, that is nothing but your application context. So here is our application context. To just make it clear, I'm drawing it because sometimes you may have ambiguity or maybe you get confused. Context, okay, the color remains the same to make it the part of this whole scenario. This is what we have to discuss over here. And this application context, this is very important to understand, is not directly extending bean factory, but rather this application context is extending this interface listable bean factory, as well as it is also extending configurable bean factory. This configurable bean factory comes into the scene here. Let me just do this like this, complete it, perfect, okay. Not that perfect, but I'm just trying here. Here we have another one that I was talking, that is configurable bean factory. Just let me delete this one and try to insert the text. We have configurable bean factory here, okay. Let's see. So this configurable bean factory further inherits from your hierarchical bean factory, okay. and application context. This is further extending the capabilities of this configurable bean factory as well. Here I go, here and here. Drawing actually takes a lot of time. Okay, so let's come back to the topic here. We have bean factory at top, we have hierarchical bean factory, listable bean factory, auto wire capable bean factory. These are the famous one or the mostly used in the application. Beside this, there are also other interfaces which is not drawn in the picture. Okay, and this interface configurable bean factory is simply extending hierarchical bean factory, and your application context, the center, the point of discussion for today is here. Okay, and this discussion that this particular interface I'm going to talk about here, I'm drawing it to explain you clearly that this does not directly extend bean factory, but as you know the rules of inheritance over here, so I don't require here to explain if this particular interface is extending the listable bean factory and listable bean factory is further extending bean factory, so it has inherited the feature, or we can say this particular application context is built on top of this bean factory and it has all the functionalities available over here. So why it was introduced, the reasons all I have mentioned, and not all but few I have mentioned over here. This is the reason why application context we have, and all the list of this hierarchical, listable, auto wire and configurable bean factory, and this application context. And as I said over here, this application context belong to another package, that is org.springframework.context, and rest of these belong to org.springframework.beans.factory. And this is the hierarchy, and this application context you can use in here, which will act as a bean factory, providing objects to your component. And to note here, generally anything a bean factory, this interface that you have used here in your code, bean factory, whatever this bean factory can do, an application context can do as well. There is no feature that is going to be lagged here in case of application context. But on top of it, this application context offer more features than this bean factory directly. So let's just jump into code and start with checking out what exactly we have over here and how we are going to make use of this application context in our application. Well, we can load this an application context by pointing to resource directly, like we are doing over here, XML bean factory, we are pointing to file system resource, or another choice that we have here, we can point to a file system location. Directly you have a particular configuration file located anywhere in your network, you can point it to using the file system and you can access it. So there are two implementation classes that we have over here for our this interface application context. One is the file system XML application context, and another is the class path XML application context. Let me write it over here. We have two implementation basically used implementation classes for application context. What are those? One is the file system XML application context and another is the class path XML application context. Okay, so these two classes, let me just show you, demonstrate you what exactly I'm trying to say here. So rather than having this bean factory which is deprecated by making use of this XML bean factory, I'm gonna comment it. So as I commented out, there should be some code that will be pointing you toward errors. So what I'm going to use as a substitution for this bean factory is our application context. Let's say this is the interface I'm talking about. I create a variable of type this application context, and to show you everything, this hierarchy, this diagram I showed you, just you select it, right click on it and open the declaration. To make it clear, whatever I said or I drew was exactly the same thing over here. We have this abstract interface known as application context that resides in the package org.springframework.context. I mentioned it over here, I guess somewhere here, org.springframework.context. It contains the application context, and you can see here quickly that it extends this environment capable not to be discussed. It extends here listable bean factory. One I just drew over there, listable bean factory, hierarchical bean factory, message source is not to be discussed, application event publisher, resource pattern. So these two you can see over here, hierarchical bean factory and listable bean factory. Here just I drew actually, I guess, configurable bean factory as well as it is listable bean factory. These two interfaces it is implementing, and directly you can say extending over here, and hence we are going to use it. This is all about the hierarchy and where it resides and what is it exactly. This package you need to make an import, so point your mouse over here, rest for some time, and just import application context from org.springframework.applicationcontext. Now next what you need to do over here is to use either, as I said, class path XML application context or file system XML application context. So first I'm going to show you how to use this file system XML application context. Here again you need to make an import for this. Just point your mouse and springframework.context.support. Now here you can pass the location of your XML file wherever it is located on your hard disk, on your system, or in the network. Let's say this beans.xml file I have over here in my one of the directories in my operating system. Let's jump over here to C drive. Here let's say I create a folder, let's call it test AC, and in this test AC application context I paste this file. So I have beans.xml there, and I just remove this beans.xml out of this. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is simply point it over this C drive that contains test AC folder that contains further beans.xml file. Okay, and let's just save the changes over here, and let's try to execute the application first. It's been long, I'm just discussing, so better to see the results to believe it. Okay, so let's not care about output. I guess from the output is coming from the last session of discussion where we just have configured about the constructor injection we have seen. So you can see the configuration has been read from this file. What if this file does not exist? It will just show you file not found exception. Let's see here, run Java application, and this is what large set of exception hierarchy, and all red one my favorite. You can see here parsing XML document from file IO exception means some kind of input output. What it says that Java file not found exception. Let's not dig into not found exception. Let's come back here on earth. So what exactly I was talking about is the thing that one way to use this application context as a factory class over or factory interface over here, we make use of this implementation class file system XML application context. Another approach is also there, that is the recommended and most widely used. Rather than using file system based approach, what you do, see here we have another class over here, application context variable, that is class path XML application context. Okay, and this name is pretty much descriptive, class path XML application context. It means it will search for the XML configuration file for this application context in your class path. Means rather than simply having it point to one of your location in your network or your hard drive, you have to place that specific file anywhere it is. You have to place it or point it to your class path. Let's see what I mean to say. This was your file C drive test acc beans1.xml. So let me just copy it here, let me paste it over here. You can see here clearly that I commented out the above line, and I'm just trying to run the application. Run application. Exception, of course I was expecting this. What exception? The same file not found exception. Let me quickly show you file not found exception. This means one.xml what we are pointing to is does not exist. So I change it to bean.xml, and if you have seen same code that I just used over here was working. Beans.xml was found in this case, but here why not? Because this particular location, whatever you are referring to, is going to be found on this class path of your application. You don't have to mention the full path or location over here. You just mention the resource that you want to refer to using this, or load this particular resource using class path XML application context. But before doing this, you have to place this bean.xml or point it to your class path. As of now, you know that class path is nothing but the location where your JVM will look for the resources at runtime, whether it be the class file or it is going to be XML file. Thus you have to place it somewhere in your system or in your network where your particular JVM is going to point for or look for your class files. So exactly this class path, how I'm going to point it to this particular location is very simple. In Eclipse, you come to your project, select it, right click on it, come to properties. Next is here the Java build path. Here are the libraries. In the library section, you have a lot of options, like if you want to place a jar file in your class path so that at runtime your Java JVM can find that library and make use of it in the application, you add those jar using this particular window or this particular option over here. But this time we are not going to add a jar. We need to refer or point or simply configure Eclipse for the class path where it should look for the files or resources which is needed by our JVM. So at this moment you have two choices. One is the adding the external class folder, another is internal. Let's talk about the external one first, as I have this beans.xml located in my hard disk in C drive test.ac folder. Click on this add external class folder, and where exactly that particular file is you have to point to, I guess test.ac. This is the folder. Okay, and hit OK again. Okay, so just run the application once more. Java application, save the changes. Yes, you got the output. Getting it? This time class path XML application context is trying to search this file bean.xml in order to produce the manage bean, wire it with your application and return back as a factory produced object. So this time it got found because we have, wherever this resource is, we have pointed dot location or configured in Eclipse that location as class path for our application. Now JVM can easily locate it, but this location, as it is external to the project, and this is not a good practice to have your configuration file libraries scattered all over your network when you are building a big project. So what is the idea, is concept is to simply wrap them all together. Why exactly we name it project, create a new project? Why don't we have an option over here we say create new Java file and just have the implement it? First, it is always recommended that you build a project, you group all the resources required for the project into it, whether it be Java files, whether it be system libraries, or it is going to be any kind of third-party vendor implementation classes or anything. So this is how exactly I'm going to show you the next thing, that using this class path XML application context, not only you can just point to a resource which has been pointed as a class path of your application, you can have this particular file or resource located in your class path and you can use it. The best and the most preferred approach that few developers uses in the industry is that wherever you have your Java file, just place your XML or configuration file in the same location. This time I don't have to mention over here any library or kind of thing. Look, let me show you that I'm going to remove that path. This path I remove from here. It means if I don't have this XML file here and nowhere, neither class path is pointing to nor I have here in the location, we are looking for this bean.xml in the class path. So if I run, I must get an exception, file not found exception. Yeah, file not found exception, you can understand 13 more exception. So what the developers preferred choice most of the time is that they keep these XML files or configuration file in the same location where we have Java files, so that when we save our changes or when we try to compile it via Eclipse, it will generate the classes and at the same location it will keep our configuration file. This time we don't have to point our Eclipse to somewhere in the class path where it has to look for this bean.xml resource. Rather it is in the same location where we have class file or Java files. So we just say run as, and JVM can easily locate it without going to or digging into the system. Okay, so 1 second, I guess some exception or error is there. This should not happen exactly. Just refresh it. I have this bean.xml here and I'm exactly looking for beans.xml class path XML application context. There is no library or somewhere I am pointing to, I guess. Nowhere. So exactly this should look for run as Java application. What exactly it's saying, let me see, check out. File not found exception, class path resource beans cannot be opened because it does not exist. It do exist now, I guess. So beans.xml is here. in the same location we have our, okay, sorry, it should be placed in the src folder on top of it, not inside the package folder. This is the way it works. Sorry for that. Okay, so now you try and run this Java application, and you can see here it searched for, or it got this file from where to load the configuration. We just place it over here in our source directory where we have our sub packages. This is our class path. Inside this subfolders we have the classes are searched into it when we compile our application using the ant script that is being used by our Eclipse. Okay, so but again, you have seen that class path XML application context can read your XML configuration from anywhere, and that is the class path contains these files. So one approach was to place it in the hard disk or network and just make the Eclipse point to that class path, or another approach you have seen to place it just near to their source folder. But this approach that developers will mostly use is not going to work in case of large project when we have lot of configuration files. And if you are going to just place it in the src folder, you will have a list of file, and it will be very difficult to distinguish between your packages, your source file, your libraries, and where are the configuration files. So the better approach is what, to just group all this configuration file in a separate folder, like as we have this src folder. What I'm saying is just create another folder over here, like I say new folder, and let's name it over here config files. Okay, and just place all your configuration file or group your configuration files over here. Let's just refresh it a bit. Okay, so it's how going to look like now the project. Very clearly the source codes for the application is here and all the configuration files are here. But this time this beans.xml, if you're trying to execute, will not be found in the class path. Test it yourself. Run as Java application. Okay, so the file it is looking for cannot be found in the class path. So as I said, we can add this or point this particular location or directory into our class path in Eclipse. We can similarly add any project folder to the class path of our project so that JVM can look for it. Right click again on it, come to properties. Here in the libraries you can see, as I use this add external class folder earlier, we have to use or go for this class folder. Eclipse has got a lot of feature, and in this tutorial only you are going to learn a lot of other features, and if you know it better, I just guess for those who don't know these features of pointing your class path in case of Eclipse, this I am demonstrating this. Add class folder. Look here, not only the current project you are working on, even if you have kept your configuration file or you have already created it and you want to just make a reuse of the configuration file somewhere in your different project, you can just choose the folder and it will be pointed in the class path so that JVM can look for that file when you are referring to it in your application code. Let's just talk about this particular project. We have the config files folder. You just select it, click OK. You can see here config files are now in your build path, jars and class folder on the build path. Click OK here and just try and execute the application once more. Run as Java application. Okay, so you get it. These are the possible ways in which the application context interface can be used, and if you find it like it is getting messed up, so let me just summarize it. What we have over here, the two choices, file system and class path. In case of file system, nothing but just point your resources or just point your component to look for resources on disk or network. But in case of class path, wherever you keep your configuration files, point that to the class path, or we call it add, point, better word is add that to the class path. Now for adding class path, you have seen multiple ways in Eclipse. Anyone that you wish you can use in your development strategy, but my recommendation, and it would be better to use the last one approach that I showed you. Create a separate folder, group all your configuration files over here, and then make it point to the class path so that JVM can search for this file and make use of. So there's nothing like a big hierarchy of classes and interfaces I was discussing about. Just to give you a concept, an idea of this was very necessary for you to understand what is the hierarchy and exactly where this BeanFactory is. This is separate package, this is another package where this application context is. I mentioned it over here, and I think it should be like, to complete the diagram once, I must draw this package once more to just give you, this is the package. Okay, so this is the package I am talking about, and this is where this specific interface application context lies in. And if we talk about other factory classes and interfaces, all these lies in this package here. Okay, so this is going to be your final diagram and complete diagram where you can see everything that you require to understand this hierarchy, but only one line of code that we have to discuss, but still it's very important, trust me, and it's going to help you a lot. Okay, so this is the final diagram you can see, and thank you for watching.